Joining me from the city is Paul Mortimer. He's Global Head of Market Economics at BNP Paribas. Thank you very much indeed for joining us this morning. If we look at Ireland to start with, Ireland's now taking this bailout, but this isn't the end, it's just the beginning, and many people were a bit concerned actually to see just how little reaction there was to the Irish 10-year bond. Does that worry you that the IMF bailout doesn't even seem to have the effect that it might have once had, say, in Greece?
Well, I think there's still lots of uncertainties, aren't there, about Ireland, not least the fact that we're heading for an election, but we don't yet know the date of the election. We've got a budget today. We don't know whether the opposition parties will try and block the passage of the budget or not. So lots of uncertainties, and of course markets dislike uncertainty. And then there's a question of who's next, and that's where the market's head is at the moment. And the fact is that Europe has never adopted a holistic solution to these problems. Yeah. We seem to wait until it becomes a real crisis. We look over the edge and then we step back, and the market doesn't like that because it senses that the next step is Portugal, and Portugal's again in the same position of denial. It doesn't want to go to the EFSF. It's very natural. You don't want to give up your sovereignty to the IMF willingly. It's not good for you as a politician. And so the market's worrying that this may continue to drag on, and I think that's why we haven't seen a reaction in the bond market.
Now, we've been told by the Irish Central Bank Governor that there will be a restructuring of some kind, a slimming down, he said, I think, of Ireland's banks. Again, we don't have an awful lot of detail on this, and without that detail, and with the idea that creditors are guaranteed, and yet that doesn't seem to be particularly realistic longer term, is that something that swells the idea of contagion throughout Europe? Yeah,
again, it's back to the uncertainty. We've seen the Irish, set up the NAMA to try and draw a line under the banking problem. To be honest, I don't think they did that decisively, and the worries that there are still bigger losses yet to be recognised in the Irish banks. And so the IMF and EU, ECB teams are going through the books at the moment, seeing exactly how much money the banking system needs. I'm very certain that the IMF have in mind the experience of Asia back at the end of the 90s, when we saw that the country that tackled its banking problems the quickest, recovered quickest, and that was Korea. And they did better than Thailand and the Philippines. The head of the IMF mission to Ireland went on that Korean mission. So they want to be sure that they're going to draw a line once and for all under the banking system.
Yes, but if you remember what happened there, you're talking about that. In that situation, not all of the senior bondholders were paid out in full, and actually we've got Angela Merkel and others saying that those creditors are absolutely guaranteed to get their money back. Is that realistic?
Well, I think that's the line, and I don't think we've got any reason really to doubt that at the moment. I think the Irish have also said that the senior bondholders are going to be treated pari passu with the depositors, and the depositors are protected. So clearly there are worries about what if the Irish banking problem turns out to be much bigger than people expect. Could people be dragged in? And those doubts will linger for some time, I think.
Now, you talked a little bit about contagion. Just how far could it go? I mean, almost it seems as if Portugal, that a lot of people would not be that surprised if Portugal had to draw on these funds. But what about Spain? That would be another story, wouldn't it?
Well, Spain is a different order of magnitude, isn't it? Very much bigger than the other countries. But clearly there's some important differences between Ireland and Spain. For one, Ireland had a very concentrated banking system. So when interest rates were far too low for it, as they were for Spain, then the competition element in Ireland really drove the banks mad, and there were very irresponsible lending practices, high loan-to-value ratios. That wasn't as true in Spain. It's clear that Spain has some very big, internationally diversified banks that are strong, which again contrasts with Ireland. But there do continue to be worries about the Caja, but the Spanish government have been moving to deal with the Caja. Nonetheless, when I speak to investors are worried that maybe, as we didn't know the full truth about Ireland, maybe we don't know the full truth about Spain. And that's why, as uncertainty about Ireland and Portugal is spreading, then Spain is kind of getting dragged slowly into the same mixer. Hopefully, once the other two situations are resolved, there's more certainty, then that will allow Spain to detach from the other two peripherals.
OK. Paul Mortimer, thank you very much indeed for joining us.